And welcome to the webinar. It's so good to have you with me. I see some familiar names on the webinar. Donna and Teodora, I recognize your names. It's good to see you. And for those of you who are joining us on Instagram, welcome, welcome. Today we are talking about iridology and fiber structure. As we pop into this topic, I just want to take a moment to introduce myself for anybody who might be new to us. My name is Judith Cobb. I'm a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner, certified iridologist, and certified comprehensive iridology instructor. I have been in practice for 4 decades now. It blows my mind. It blows my mind to think that I've actually been in the industry for that long. And tell you, I have known I've taken a lot of courses. I've chucked a lot of the information that I've taken, that I've learned, because it wasn't worth keeping. And I'm constantly working on upgrading and learning more and being better at what I do. And that's what we need to do when we're in this industry, right? Hello, Sue. It's good to have you with us on the webinar. I would love it if you would, just in the chat box, let me know maybe where you're from, just so that I can get to know you a little bit. That would be a ton of fun, to get to know who you are. And if you don't want to publish it to the whole group, you can just send it to me. You can choose to send it just to panelists, and that would be just fine. We've got Instagram coming up for us, so let's dive in and have a look at fiber structure in the iris. Now we need to start with an understanding of the anatomy of the iris itself. So as you're looking at this, I want you to imagine that the pupil is here, and we are looking at a cross section of the iris, of one side of the iris. So if we've got one side of the iris here, we've got the pupil here, then we've got the mirror image of this on this other side over here. And for those of you on Instagram, you aren't even seeing my full width of my screen. Let me pull my camera back. There we go. So this would be one side, the pupil, and the other side would be over here. So what we're looking at here, primarily we want to pay attention to the anterior border layer. And just remember this name, because we're going to be talking about it a little bit as we continue on. And we're talking about the stroma as well. Those are the 2 key things we need to be looking at today. When we talk about the stroma, this is made up of layers of fiber. We call those fibers very specifically trabeculae, or trabecula is the singular. So that's a big fancy word. There will be a spelling test. And as we talk about trabecula or trabeculae, because we're going to talk about a lot of them, we are going to look at how they sit in the iris. And we're going to talk about why we see them sometimes and why we don't see them other times. In this beautiful blue eye, we see abundant trabeculae. Do you see all these fibers, all these threads in the eye? These are all trabeculae. And this is what we're referring to when we are talking about fibers in the eye. We always see trabeculae in a blue eye. We always do. Oops, but here we have a true brown eye, and there is not a trabecula to be seen. Now, why would that be? Why would we not see trabeculae in a blue eye or in a brown eye? So let's come back to this image. And as we look at this, we recognize that all of this stroma is made up of many things. And thank you so much, Donna. You are not seeing my slides. Oh my goodness. Okay, you know what? We have had issues with Zoom all along. They are just not being happy and cooperative. Okay, Donna, let me know. Is this better? Are you seeing a black and white drawing of a cross section of an iris? Are you seeing this now? Yes, we saw that slide, but not the next ones you went to. Okay. Do you see a blue iris on your screen? We have just had, yes, thank you so much, Donna. I appreciate you letting me know that. I've done entire 30-minute presentations recently, and Zoom has not forwarded my slides when I've been forwarding them, and it's been very frustrating. Thank you so much for letting me know that we had the issue. And so Here we go. So in this beautiful blue eye, we can see all of these fibers. All of these threads or fibers are called trabeculae. And this is really, really important. So let's pop back here. We've got this one, which you've seen, where the stroma is made up of trabeculae. It also has muscles in it, and it also has blood vessels and nerves in it. But what we see is trabeculae. And there's layers upon layers of these fibers in the eye. Now, remember, the iris is really not very thick, right? It's not like miles thick or anything, but we've got enough thickness there that we've got several layers of trabeculae. When we look at a true brown eye, like this eye, and for those of you who are with me on Instagram, I'm going to slide this a whole lot closer. There we go. We actually, in a brown eye, don't see any fiber. And the question is, where did it go? Why is the fiber not showing up there? And the fiber is not showing up. Remember, I mentioned the anterior border layer. The anterior border layer is where the pigment lives. And so when we have a brown eye, like this, all of this brown pigment, which there's several different types of pigment in a brown eye, but melanin is the primary one, resides in this anterior border layer. And that means that in a true brown eye, there is enough pigment that it masks, it hides, it veils all of the fiber that is behind that. Does that make sense? Does that make sense for you as to why we don't see the fiber in a true brown eye? Now, there is one little bit of an exception to the rule as we do this, and this is an eye that we would call connective tissue or polyglandular. We're not going to get into what those terms mean right now, but in these types of eyes, we see fiber separations like this that have a shape. And when we have these shapes, we know that there's fiber here, but there is always fiber in a brown eye. The difference is that in the polyglandular or the connective tissue type, we can actually see where the fiber is separating, and we can look down between those fibers. Does that make sense for you? Hello, Zaytunya. It's good to see you on Instagram. Thanks for being there. All right, so as we start looking at fiber, we need to understand that fiber structure tells us much about our client's inherent potential. I just need to get a better grip on my phone here. There we go. Tells us much about our client's inherent potential. The lay of this fiber is not going to change. We can cleanse, we can take herbs till we're blue in the face. We can do a jig on the corner of 8th and 8th, and it is not going to move these fibers one little bit. They are placed genetically, inherently. And so when we see fibers, it gives us information. When we see areas where the fibers are a little bit separated and things are a little darker between them, we know that's an area that's going to ongoing and genetically need more nurturing. It needs a little more effort put into it to make sure it's getting the nutrients it needs and to make sure that it can take the garbage out well. And so as we look for fiber, we are looking, are there gaps? Are there fibers? Now, those of you on Instagram, I hope you can see this. Are there fibers that are running across other fibers? Can you see this little patch of fiber right here where we've got fibers going in different directions? Typically, we expect the fiber to go in and out, do a little hairpin turn, and sometimes we see this kind of a thing happening. When we see that, we then need to take what is that fiber actually doing? There's many different classifications of errant fibers, for lack of a better description. So we need to know what kind of an errant fiber are we working with? Where is it sitting in the iris? And does it give us information that correlates with the rest of the eye and that correlates with our client's complaints? Does that make sense? So we don't look at this and we go, oh, I know what's wrong with you, because we don't. We don't know what's wrong with them. We need more information. We see a mark. It doesn't give us the full story. Now, this eye is actually from a darling 4-year-old darling 4-year-old. And she's in very good health. Her parents feed her organically. Her parents are very loving. Everything is wonderful. We do see some inherent traits here that she got from her mom and her dad, maybe from her grandparents, maybe from her great-grandparents, because these inherent traits can be passed down for up to 3 or 4 generations. Here is another iris. And as we look at this iris, we can see that generally the fibers are very neatly organized. They radiate outwards very nicely indeed. And as we look at this, I'm trying to look through my phone to see where the errant fibers are. Oops. I'm going to ask you to focus your attention over here at about 3 o'clock, close to the edge of the eye. Now, this is very faint, and for those of you on Instagram, it might be really, really hard to see. But over here, we've got some little fibers that are running crosswise. They're running across everything. And so when we see these fibers and we see a bundle of them like this, there's quite a few right there, we know that we are going to be asking questions about the family history of bone health. Right? And maybe there's some osteoporosis, maybe there's some osteopenia, maybe there's some osteomalacia, maybe there's something like that in the history. Maybe someone had rickets, right, of course, which is vitamin D deficiency. Maybe that altered the genes that they passed down, so that's what this person has inherited. So it's really important for us to know the history. Now, these pictures were taken of a 12-year-old boy, and very physically active, plays highly competitive soccer, does every sport that he can get his hands on in school. He's a star student and a star athlete. He's one of those kids. He's also my grandson, so I get to be really proud of him. And so when I look at his eyes and I see this, and I understand how his mother does most of the cooking, how his mother feeds him, I have nothing to worry about. This is an extremely healthy home, very, very good eating patterns, and really good activity levels, and lots of time for recreation and things like that. So I'm not worried about this. I see the sign. It's an inherent marker. It makes me know I want to pay attention there, but I need to ask questions to see, is it a going concern? And it is not. So for now, I can ignore it. Now, as he grows up, he's actually now 16, way taller than I am. If when he's like 23, 24, he starts to be less active, if he started to have some indications that his bones were not being happy, if, when he moves out from mom's kitchen and he's cooking for himself, if I catch him doing the Twinkies and Coca-Cola diet, I might have more concerns about him, and I might pull him aside and say, sweetie, you know how much grandma loves you. I'm really worried, and give him some information to work with. Here is another beautiful eye that, again, lots of color, lots of fun stuff in here, lots of fun stuff. But as we're looking for fibers, do you see that right down here, we've got some that are going crosswise, and right here especially, we've got some that are going crosswise. Now, again, these aren't the ones that make me wonder about bone. These are simply called transversals, and they make me wonder about what is the organ that sits in this area of the organ reaction fields of the iris map. What is that organ? What is its history? What is its potential? Are there things I need to be aware of here? Are there questions I need to ask about personal and family history? And there would be. I would ask this person. I wouldn't do it in a way that made them panic, because that's not helpful. And I usually do this at the very beginning. Hello, Medita. Good to see you on Instagram. Thanks for joining us. And Carrie, good to see you as well. When I see a marking in an eye, I never ask about it directly at the outset. I always ask my client, what are your health concerns that you'd like my help with? And then I always ask if they're aware of any things that have been passed down through the generations. And in that way, I can often get a good picture of what the history is. Hi, Hip Hop, good to see you. And as I get that history, that idea of what the family history is and what my client's concerns are, then I can look at the eyes and choose the markings that correlate to what my client needs right now. Right? I'm not going to tell my client everything I see in their eye from the outset. That's too much information. It's scary. It will often throw people either into total disbelief or into total panic, and it will help make it impossible for them to take action. So with this person, I would ask that personal family history about the organ that sits in this particular area of their eye. And in this case, this is a beautiful right iris. This is sitting down in the organ reaction fields of the ovaries, testes, the bottom of the liver, because that's what's sitting in this part of the eye. So if it's a female, I'll ask questions about her menstrual cycles, about reproduction. I'll ask about liver, because that actually ties into all of that. I'll ask, if it's a male, I'll ask about, is reproduction an issue? Are there any challenges with fertility? And ask about the liver as well, right? And so I'm not saying there is anything wrong. I'm saying the body is giving us a clue right here that inherently there could be a weak link. And I'm going to want to dig deeper if that is what the client wants my help with. If this client came in with problems with headaches, that ties into liver, so not a good example. If this client came into me with concerns about kidney function, I might totally ignore this marking because it has nothing to do with kidney function. Until we've got the kidney function regulated and we've built them up and supported them and strengthened them and nourished them, then as the kidney function issues are under control, new symptoms might come up. And that would mean that maybe then we're in a position where the client is mentioning something that correlates to liver or the gonads. And from there, I'm going to be asking questions. Is this making sense for you? Does it fit? All right, so here we have, can you see the lymphatic system from the eyes? Hip Hop is asking. Interesting. We can see indications, for example, in a blue eye, we always suspect lymphatic, even if we don't see lymphatic indications. There are in some people markers that do suggest an inherent predisposition towards lymphatic issues. What those issues are, we don't know until we talk to the client, until we ask the questions. So here we have another beautiful set of blue eyes. And as we look at these beautiful blue eyes, we are looking specifically, oops, I did not mean to bring that window up. We're looking at right over here. There's a particular thread, particular trabecula. Can you see this one trabecula? Right here, do you see this? This trabecula is connecting the heart zone to the spleen zone, and we call it a heart-spleen transversal. It suggests that we need to find out if there is a family history of anything to do with heart issues. And so again, is there a personal or family history of? We are never going to alarm the client with saying, I see this marking and I suspect it could be, because I don't suspect anything. I look at this and I ask the question. These are the eyes of a nutritionist who is extremely physically active. She's in very, very good health. And there are no indications in her family history that there is anything for us to be concerned with here. And so when I'm working with a client like that, I will just generally suggest that it's just a really good idea to keep the diet clean. And when we see eyes like this, we often want to include certain kinds of foods in the diet. And we want to just stay really physically active. And no need to alarm the client whatsoever. We need to focus on the things that our client needs us to focus on. Does that make sense? Here again, we have a lovely set of blue eyes, and we're looking at mostly blue eyes today because, again, we don't see the fibers in most brown eyes. We may see them in a biliary or what some people would call a hazel eye, but we see them really clearly in blue eyes. And so for educational purposes, we look where we see them most easily, correct? And so as we look at this eye, again, what we want to look for, oh, I keep hitting buttons on my computer. There we go. What we see in here is we have a big fiber coming down the side here. Interestingly, this client does have a family history of heart issues, and she is in her mid to late 60s. And so the advice that we worked on with her, and that was not her issue, she came in for respiratory problems. So we didn't focus on this. I touched on it lightly because we know that heart can augment respiratory issues, correct? And so as we work on the respiratory issues, then we just touch on, let's keep your heart really healthy so that we, because respiratory and heart are like this, let's keep your heart really healthy. Let's get you doing this with your diet. Let's get you being physically active. Let's just babysit that heart a little bit while we are addressing the lung and respiratory issues, right? And so the fibers in the eye give us information. And actually, did you notice we have one over here as well? This is not a heart spleen because you only have the spleen showing up in the client's left eye, but this is certainly showing up in the lung region, right? And so we've got some other things that suggest lung here as well. And so we just have it underscored that lung is where we need to focus. She has symptoms and we see the inherent weak links there. And so we know that that is where we need to be. Now, the inherent side of this is a lot of fun when we start doing the multi-generational things. So, okay, as my mother used to say, I'm going to tell you tales out of school, which means that I'm telling you a story about what happened. These are my eyes. This is my eye. Have a really good look at the fiber structure that you see here. Okay, so you see that for the most part, we have really nice fiber radiating outwards until we get down here. And down here, we've got some that are just being a little bit wonky. So this tells us about certain predispositions in my body, which I have managed beautifully for the 61 years of my life. And I have no symptoms of what these could mean. So that's very exciting. This is my fourth son. You see, he's also got some markings, some of these fibers going off in interesting directions. This one is the most notable one, a little patch of them right over here. And so we know that he has some similar weak links to what mine are. And he goes, gee, thanks, Mom, right? And then we look at his lovely little girl. These were taken when his daughter was 2 years old. And as we look at this, we can see that right down in here, there's a slight little pocket. Whoops, didn't mean to open that window. Slight little pocket down here of fibers that are running amok. And notice how this one is actually is not like any that her dad or I have. But as we look up a little further, we see something right in here where the fibers are being a little bit odd, which is in the same radial region as her dad has, and in the same radial region as what I've got. So we've passed those radials, those transversals down from me to my son to my granddaughter. Now, if I only had pictures of my parents' eyes, we would have a complete case study, wouldn't we? All right. So knowing that, I would just want to ask the question, do you have any questions? Any questions about anything we've talked about so far? It's good to see you, Oasis. Thanks for being with us on Instagram. I appreciate that. So I just would like to take a moment to introduce the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System for Holistic Health Practitioners. This is a course. It is a 20-week course that teaches constitutional iridology to practitioners. So herbalists, naturopaths, nutrition coaches, and it is the only live, online, fully mentored course that you will find. And we do this because I find that holistic practitioners spend way too much time creating protocols for their clients. When practitioners understand how to do iridology, constitutional iridology well, it saves them time in their client sessions. It helps them to create more specific programs that will actually give their clients more power to become healthy more quickly. And so I'm inviting you to join me for a webinar to learn more about the program. And the webinar will be on Thursday, December 10th. If you would like to attend this webinar because you want to learn about iridology and how to use it with your clients to save time, to see more clients, to not burn out so quickly, that kind of stuff. If you want to know what's included in this course, what the tuition is, how to register for it, then PM me or DM me your email address. You can drop it in the chat box if you're with me on the webinar, and just send it to me privately there. If you're with me on Instagram, just DM your email address to me. I will make sure you get added to the announcements about the course and that you receive the link. The next full program is starting on Thursday, January 28th. So again, if you are a herbalist, a nutritionist, a naturopath, a holistic health coach, and you've got a good understanding of anatomy and physiology, then join me for the info session on December 10th first. Just send me your email address and I will make sure you get that registration information for that free introduction. Are there any questions? Or are we good? I'll give everybody just about 10 or 15 seconds. If you're typing in a question, give me a raise your hand if you're with me on the webinar, or give me a thumbs up if you're with me on Instagram, and I will wait for your question. And it looks like there are no questions at this point in time. Thank you so much for being with me today. I hope you found that interesting and informative. If you already have some iridology under your belt, maybe it took you up a little level to give you a better understanding of some things that maybe weren't covered in your program. I look forward to seeing you again. Take good care and we'll be in touch. Bye for now.